o'clock. Thank you all for coming. Before we get started today, and for everyone at home, we're just going to stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, so a couple housekeeping things here before we get into it. Obviously, if you've looked at some of the backup material, we've highlighted some of the bigger issues that are being discussed in the community for sure. So we want to make sure that those staff were definitely here to answer any questions from the public. So that's the first thing. However, you can ask any question about any topic related to city business, and you don't even have to ask a question. You can just give some feedback, which could help staff develop our budget. We have a lot of meetings throughout the year, budget workshops and so forth. So there's lots of opportunities to give back if you did miss today's meeting for sure. And if you are at home, or even if you're here in the audience and you don't want to come up here and ask your question or comment, you can just send it to budgetinfo@cityofnorthport.com. That's budgetinfo@cityofnorthport.com. We have Ms. Madison here who is monitoring all of the questions that come in, and we'll try and get those to staff, and hopefully we'll be able to answer those questions. If we can't, we'll definitely get you that answer as soon as we can. So just making sure I've gotten everything else here. What we're going to do is, if you do have a question or comment, we're going to have some brief presentations by staff on some of those hot topic issues. And then we're just going to ask if you come up and give your comments here so that everyone at home can hear you. If you just yell them out from the audience, it makes it a little bit difficult for people watching at home to hear. So you can just come right up, and we're just asking, we're trying to keep, hopefully you can get your question or comment in about under 3 minutes would be helpful. And once everybody has an opportunity to ask their questions, then you can come up and ask another one if you have another question. So also, we know that the septic to sewer question is a big one that's out there in the community. We do have a fact sheet in the back of the building here, which we'd be more than happy to give you. All that information is available on our website as well. So I have a feeling we'll be talking about that one. But in the meantime, we have Assistant City Manager Carrie.
Thank you. Thank you, Josh. Good afternoon, and welcome to the City of Northport's Community Input Budget Meeting. I'm Carrie Branco, Assistant City Manager for City of Northport. And as we prepare our annual budget for fiscal year 22, this is where we're looking to get some public engagement and input, as Josh mentioned, to our process. Our first step of public engagement was conducting an online survey in February targeted to gather information from residents to help us understand how well we're doing, how well are we spending your money. And so we received over 1,000 responses, and we discussed those results during our March 29th budget assumptions meeting. So after that, we also wanted to hold some public meetings. So we had our first one 2 days ago, and this is our second. And it's really important that we are encouraging the public to work with us. And as we've all heard, we work for you. And in doing that, you're kind of like our bosses. And so if there's something you want, or if there's information we need to get to you, this is the kind of opportunity to have this kind of informal conversation. So staff here, we're going to be providing information on high-level topics such as Warm Mineral Springs, Price Boulevard Widening Project, and the proposed water and sewer plan. The conversation will include addressing perception versus reality on these topics. And they usually generate a lot of public interest. And what I've seen and read, that there's a lot of misinformation out there, and hopefully this is an opportunity to kind of go through the things we've heard or read and kind of set the record straight. And as always, we always have an open door. And if there's ever an opportunity that somebody would like to meet with myself or any of the directors, we're always open and welcoming that. I will now introduce Madison Hyde, Communications Coordinator, who will walk through how the questions and answers will be handled.
I think we covered that with
Got it.
Josh mostly. Hi, everybody.
Emails.
Oh, but yes, if you'd like to send in an email, you can probably see it on your screen if you're watching it from home. But it's budgetinfo@cityofnorthport.com. So I'll be sitting here watching them and compiling them, and we'll get to those later after the presentation.
Thank you, Madison. Okay, our first slide, we're going to be talking about the millage rate and taxes. So the next couple of slides are the ones where I just mentioned that we're going to address some of those misconceptions out there. And the first thing, just kind of taking a look at this is in no particular order, is that we've heard that Northport increased taxes by 20% last year. And in actuality, we increased taxes by 2.8%. I'm sorry, decreased our taxes by 2.8%. So again, we mentioned and we heard that that's 20% or 30% figure was out there. And I kind of wanted to set the record straight of how that came to be. Yes, initially, when we brought all the department requests together, when we rolled everything up and looked at our initial revenue projections, yes, to match that millage, it looked like we would need a 20 to 30% increase. That is part of the process. It's not unique. We never intended to adopt a budget like that. That's in the process of planning and the planning stages as we are in right now. So, for instance, last year we had that as the initial. We came in the summer to the commission, took a look at those expenditures and revenues, and we whittled them down, and we brought forth a balanced budget where the commission adopted, and the end result was a millage increase of 2 to 0.8. I'm sorry, decrease, I keep saying that. Decrease of 2 to 0.8%. The next item was the millage rate in Northport is higher than most. I'm going to be looking at a couple slides, next 2 or 3 slides that are going to address that, but we're actually among our comparable cities, we're the lowest. Next perception, overall taxes and fees paid by citizens in Northport are higher than most. We're also going to look at a slide that looks at our effective millage rate, which is where we wanted to compare ourselves with the cities in Florida that are comparable and include our assessments and debt and our road and drainage and fire assessments and take a look at that. And when we did, we found that we were the second lowest, and we'll be looking at that in a few slides. All right, continue on with a couple other items. So government should operate like a business. We hear that a lot. And we all know businesses are profit motivated and government's not. We are not built for speed. We are built for accountability. And in saying that, we also have to provide critical services to the public, like police protection, fire, building roads, schools, and providing clean water. So our mission is to provide all the citizens these type of services for a common good. With government, next item, government procurement is wasteful and full of fraud. So government procurement is the process in which the government acquires goods and services, and we usually get these from commercial businesses. And because we're using taxpayer money, we have to make sure that we are spending appropriately and responsibly. So we have to make sure that the prices are negotiated, that they're competitive, and they're fair. So, and of course, there's these predetermined set of terms and conditions. So government procurement is highly regulated to be fair and to encourage competition. So that's just something I'd like everybody to walk away with. Next item, we often hear, even in our own city, that government services should be privatized. That will save taxpayer money. While in some cases that's correct, and I'm going to go over a couple of examples, for the most part, as we just talked about, businesses are motivated by making a profit. So just looking at the slide, privatization for most services increase costs. I'm sorry, like if we're looking to have the same level of service and we privatize, we're going to look at a higher cost. Okay, if you want a lower service than the city currently maintains, then it might be a better idea to privatize. A good example of this is every year we look at if it's going to be cost effective to outsource or to keep a service in-house. A perfect example is finish mowing. So over the years, the Department of Public Works constantly looks at this. And in the past, we've contracted out our finish mowing of high visible areas along Sumter, Toledo Blade, Biscayne. And then the department acquired more staff, more personnel, more equipment, And we're now currently doing that in-house, and we're saving money. So that's just an example of the due diligence we do every single year. Last item, there's a lack of transparency in local government. So government budgets are developed and adopted through a series of public meetings. Salaries and expenditures are readily available on our city website. We mention this all the time, but just look at our commission meetings. We have 2 to 4 times a month. This is a great opportunity of being transparent. We bring forth budget amendments. We review expenditures. We approve contracts. This is all a way to be transparent to the public. Next slide. We mentioned about the comparable cities. So instead of looking at our neighboring counties and cities that are vastly different in population, economic diversity, we really wanted to look at cities in Florida that are comparable to the city of Northport. And doing the research, we looked at the following criteria: comparable population, 10-year growth, median home value, median rent, per capita income, median household income, and as best as we could do, proximity to the coast. And on this slide, you'll see for the 7 cities that we're compared to, we have the lowest millage rate. You can kind of see a couple neighboring cities, City of Bradenton, City of Fort Myers. The other cities are on the other coast or centrally located. Mentioned earlier the effective millage rate. And so what we wanted to look at is, okay, if we rolled in all our road and drainage assessments and our fire assessments, and we rolled that in with our expenditures, what would that millage rate look like? And how do we compare to our comparable cities? So we did that, and it would go from our current millage rate of 3.7 to a 5.8. We still would be the second lowest compared to our comparable cities. So we just want to show that comparison. So this is a fun topic. We got a lot of conversation the other night about this. And so this is just to review again, looking at a sample bill, tax bill in Northport. So this is a real life example. You see the millage rate from 19 to 20. You can see that it actually decreased. And something that we want to always remind folks out there is that, Save Our Homes, it provides and limits how much we can increase the value or assessment on a home. So there's also caps. So Save Our Homes, for instance, for 21 was capped, will be capped at 1.4. This past year, you'll see on the slide that the assessed value, say, of a $200,000 home just went up to $204,600. And that had to do with Save Our Homes, plus the exemption. So we hear a lot about, well, the taxable value increased in the city of Northport by 10%, or my taxes went up 10%. Not true if you have a primary residence and you have Save Our Homes or your properties has exemptions. Now that 10% not only includes normal growth, but it also includes new growth and construction. So we just want to always remind folks of that. And fun stuff, the budget cycle. So this is just kind of to look at an interesting chart to show that we're always in our budget cycle. We're in either one phase, or we're moving into another, or we're overlapping. Currently, we're in the development phase, so that's the second block of our chart there. And this is where we're gathering department requests for the FY22 budget. We're projecting revenues, and we're receiving new requests from departments. We then enter the review phase, and this is kind of when we're talking about presenting a balanced budget to our commissioners. And that happens in June and July. And then the adoption phase, which happens in September, and that's where our proposed budget becomes adopted. And then in October, we implement the budget. This is just a graph to kind of just show you actual changes in fund balance. we hear sometimes that we have a lot of money or we're hoarding a lot of money or we have this big bank account, and it's simply not the case. So this is a great way to show you actually what's happening. We'll look at the general fund for instance. You can see in FY18 our ending balance was 13 million. In 19 it was 14 million. And as of this month, projecting out if everything holds true, we're going to be looking at a $15 million ending balance. But with that, we also, and I'm just going to go to the next slide because it kind of just falls in place, just to dig a little deeper and dive a little deeper, we ended in 20 with 15 million. We went into 21, this current fiscal year, with the 15 million. And again, just with looking at where we're at as of March, the money that we've spent, the revenue that we've collected, we're looking at ending the year at 2.8 million. So excess above our reserve policy for emergencies and disasters. So that's that 10 million on that line. So if you add the 10 and the 2, that's 12 million. But as you see, the 10 million, we have to keep reserve balance for emergencies or disasters. Okay, so this next slide talks about current revenues and basically how we were affected by COVID. So we just want to take a look. These are our major revenue sources, and those are sales tax, shared revenue from the state, and surtax revenues. And you can see that in 18, 19, 20, we averaged about $19 million. But when 20 came with COVID, the state, we really didn't know where we were going to end up. And they provided projections that were very much lower than we had seen in our current budget at the time and our actual. So we had to act accordingly because we didn't have stronger numbers, and we had to take our budget and look at whittling it down and cutting those expenditures and new budget requests and everything else. So we ended up looking to think we were just going to get about 17 million in this year. But the good news is we're going to see an uptick. And again, as of 6 months into the year, if everything stays relatively the same, we're going to look like we're going to get in $21 million. Now, not all municipalities will see this. We're probably a little unique. We don't depend on tourism revenue. And so I don't want to say this is going to be the same for everyone else in Florida, but we're very fortunate. We also didn't have a lot of businesses close in the city of Northport. So again, just kind of wanting a little bit to set the record straight. Right, the last slide I'm going to review is one of our most important. This is defining commission priorities. This is about our strategic plan. This drives our spending plan. This drives everything we do in the city. So for instance, every budget submittal last year, this year, the departments really have to look long and hard, and at least one or two of these areas need to be met when they're developing their budgets. And so just a real quick review for people who may not see the slide, our priorities involve health and public safety, parks and recreation, infrastructure, job creation, preservation, environmental preservation, affordability, neighborhood enhancement, and efficient and effective government. And moving into economic development, I am excited to introduce Kirsten Peterson, Market Research Analyst for Economic Development.
Hi, thanks, Carrie. I'm Kirsten Peterson. I am the Market Research Assistant for the City of Northport in Economic Development. So as Carrie mentioned, City of Northport is unique. We'll go over and talk about some of those reasons why, but one of them is City of Northport was just mentioned or voted, if you will, to be the fastest growing city in the state of Florida. It is one of the top fastest growing cities also in the country. So we do have some unique qualities. We're going to go through the first slide. It really tells a story about pre and post pandemic, and then it's almost like a fact sheet, and we'll sort of go through this, and then we're going to cover each point as we go through. Population. So a lot of you have probably noticed we're increasing. We've had a huge increase from 2000, which we'll talk about, to 2020. Just in the last year, it's increased by 39,909. And we'll get into some of those numbers, but we expect it to be about 100,000 in the year 2030, 100,000 people. So that's a lot of growth. Also making Northport pretty unique. We have the youngest average person in the workforce. We talked about unemployment. We'll talk about unemployment rates and where we were and where we are now. Wages. We'll talk about how Northport is also unique in the fact that it has some of the highest mean wage per household in our region, which is Northport, Sarasota, and the Manatee areas. We'll talk about housing and why that's important. I'm sure we've all noticed some changes in housing, and in the Northport area specifically, it is we've seen an increase. Probably not a surprise. For mortgages, we'll see access to credit is expected to rebound, and we'll get more into that. So, do I schedule through to go here to the next slide? Yeah, okay. Oops, that way. Okay, population and job growth. So we touched on that, but more specifically, we've seen a huge increase. Over the past decade, Northport accounted for over 20% of Sarasota County's population growth, but only 2.5% of the job growth. We'll get into that a little bit more, but in the early 2000s, the population of the county began to shift towards Northport, but the jobs did not follow. So we'll talk about where some of our citizens are going to work and to find work. The age of our workers in our region, Sarasota, Bradenton, MSA, is approximately 45 years old, which is the youngest in our region. Some of the commuter characteristics, we talked about jobs, and our typical workforce is 90% of those are leaving here to go to other locations for employment. Northport imported roughly only a third of its workforce. So we've got an opportunity there. Okay, so COVID, we feel like we're coming out the other side. It's a tough year. However, also making Northport unique, we've rebounded. We're almost back to where we were. In fact, in January of this year, the unemployment rate was 4.4% here, and it was in the U.S. 6.3%. Now we're down to 3.8%. So we're reaching back levels to where we were pre-COVID, which is at a faster rate than most other areas. Unemployment rates, we think, will continue to fall. It's showing that it is falling. And Northport was 2.1% better rate than the U.S. and 0.6% better than the state of Florida. So let's go on. Population and job growth. As we mentioned, our population has increased 3,900 for a total of 77,000 right now. Over the past decade, Northport accounted for over 20% of Sarasota County's population growth, but only 2.5% of job growth, which we talked about, and what we kind of plan as economic development to do with that. The age of workers, again, is 45, so we have the youngest working age, and our commuter characteristics is 90% leave our area. Yep, I need to go back and up. Boom, boom, boom. Okay, housing. So we know that housing needs are increasing. 65% of our homes are owner occupied, so they're not necessarily rentals like they are in some of the other areas. Occasional rentals only represent about 9% of our total houses. Currently, the total housing unit is 30,317, and we continue to see that is going to rise. Mortgages, short-term consumer loans should remain steady, corporate bond rates, slight incline, and people continue to move from urban neighborhoods into the suburbs, as we've seen clearly since COVID. I think right now there's approximately 2,000 people per day moving to the state of Florida. And with Northport being the fastest growing in the state, we expect to see a lot of that 2,000 coming to Northport. Home prices are likely to jump, which if you live here, we've seen that. Another 7% in 2021 after already an 11% rise over the year we're living with COVID. Rates will continue to rise. Foreclosures and evictions. This is something we keep an eye on. There's been a lot of talk about this. The USDA's moratorium ends in June 2021, so that will affect the housing market, evictions, and foreclosures. Let's see if I go the right direction this time. Did I go? Yep. Okay. Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce Tricia Wisner. She is Assistant Director to Parks and Recreation. You'll pick the right direction.
Thank you, Kirsten. Tricia Wisner, Assistant Director of Parks and Recreation. There's very few people that have the means to install a playground or manage a soccer field or a baseball field or obtain enough land so that we can have great walking paths and protect some land. However, parks are rated one of the highest quality of life components. They're required so that we can get out and have fun. And during COVID, we were all out in the parks. So as we look at Parks and Recreation, Carrie mentions the important things that government provides, and we work really hard to reduce expenses and increase revenue. But again, government doesn't tend to be a profit revenue center. The City of Northport broke ground on one of our facilities on June 30th, 2018. This is the Northport Aquatic Center. Some people say that we have been discussing this for 30 years, so that was a monumental day. It's a $12 million project, and it was funded primarily through surtax and park impact fees. We got open on October 21st, managed to ramp up through the winter season just in time for COVID to hit. We were ready to open for spring break, the full facility, when we got the order that we needed to close down. So it was really hard to see that have to happen. But even with the time that we were closed, the COVID impacts, and the reduction of capacity, we brought in over 36,000 people last year. We had over 2,500 people participate in programs and events. We sold over 480 annual passes. We had rentals. The community really began support of the Aquatic Center. We are back open full. During the winter months, we only open the competition pool. Right now we're in spring season, so we have the competition pool open during the week, and on weekends we have the full facility operating. So with just mostly being competition pool, so far this year we've had over 12,000 patrons come in, and we've had 1,400 events and participants, and we've sold over 253 annual passes. The Aquatic Center is important for other things, however, besides just a great day in the water. Florida, unfortunately, has earned #1 ranking for children drowning between ages 1 and 4. Our team works really hard for outreach to help people of all ages from 6 months up through adults to learn how to swim in water safety. And that's not just water safety in a pool, that's canals, boats, wherever the water takes you in Florida, we want to make sure you're prepared and safe. We've had over 400 individuals, including some adults, take swim lessons. We also have great trained staff. 70% of our staff have advanced certifications so that they can help teach others how to swim. We also have a program with social services to help those that don't have the means to afford Learn to Swim classes. We'll have a scholarship program available so that you can sign up for that, and we'll get you into the classes. The emergency action plan by the Department of Health does require that we have 19 lifeguards on at all times that's on the deck when the full facility is operating. As I mentioned before, many portions of the year we are only operating the competition pool, and that requires 3 lifeguards. So let's look at the numbers. I mentioned before that we had great projections last year. We had projected to generate about $784,000 in revenue with $1.6 million in expenses. This does also include the maintenance of the Atwater splash pad for our aquatics team. However, COVID impacted a lot of our operations last year. So the aquatic center has $130,000 worth of revenue so far this year, and $411,000 worth of expenses. Spring break was great this year. This was the first time we were able to operate during spring break, both sides of the facility, and we brought in over $50,000. The concession stand is amazing. It's a very small concession stand, but it made over $10,000 that 9 days. This is one of those facilities, though, that you'll see the vast majority of our revenue is likely to come during summer, which we didn't get to see last year. So we're expecting about 65% of our revenue during the summer months. So you can't just look at these numbers and kind of extrapolate them out. We'll see a definite spike during summer. And then, so for this year, for fiscal year 1920, we have projected $766,000 in revenue and $1.5 million in expenses. But again, due to COVID, those numbers were completely different than anticipated, with $351,000 in revenue and about $900,000 in expenses. But we are also working on scholarships and sponsorships. We've had $18,400 in donations and sponsorships so far for this aquatic center. Now I'm going to bring Sandy Funheller, she's the Director of Parks and Recreation, up to talk about Warm Mineral Springs.
Good afternoon, everyone. Sandy Funheller, Parks and Recreation Director. I just want to go over the Warm Mineral Springs Park project that we have that has had a lot of discussion out in the community. We had the Warm Mineral Springs Park Master Plan, which was adopted in April of 2019. A large portion of the plan included community input. We had consultants from Kimley Horn host a series of stakeholder meetings and community engagement sessions, and we also did a survey. So all of that is taken into account in the final master plan that we did for that park. And it includes not just the existing buildings and the springs, it is the entire 81.6 acres. There's no financial commitments that have been made for project construction at this point. We are currently working on the initial phase for the design and engineering. When we did the master plan, there was an estimated cost for all 4 phases that was $19.5 million. That was done in April of 2019. However, each phase of design engineering and then construction will come back to the commission for discussion and approval before moving forward. In February of 2020, we had a contract amendment, and that was for the initial phase of improvements for Warm Mineral Springs Park. This includes restoration of the existing buildings. They are on the National Register of Historic Buildings, and also utility infrastructure improvements and parking lot accessibility improvements. We have gotten to about 100% plans at this point. We anticipate being ready to go out for bid pending commission approval of construction sometime in the summer. And at this point, it looks like it's a preliminary estimate is $9.2 million for this first phase. Again, that's just the restoration of the buildings to historic significance. We have been given specific direction from City Commission that no ad valorem tax monies are to be spent on this project. So we are looking at options for potential funding sources. We are applying for grants and may look at a public-private partnership in future phases of the master plan. So just some history for the park. Again, the buildings and the springs are both on the U.S. National Register of Historic Places. There's evidence of prehistoric man, saber-toothed tigers, giant sloths, all there in that park. The buildings were built in 1959 to celebrate Florida's quadricentennial, and then the city purchased Sarasota County's interest in the springs in 2014. In 1920, Warm Mineral Springs Park collected over $990,000 in revenue, welcomed more than 84,000 visitors, and that was despite closures and capacity reductions due to COVID. In 1819, the year before, the park collected nearly $1.3 million in revenue and welcomed over 117,000 guests. As of January 31st, 2021, Warm Mineral Springs Park had just over $2 million from admission revenue in our fund balance. And since owning the park, the fund balance has posted positive gains every year. The fiscal year 21 adopted budget for the park includes $902,000 in expenditures, with revenue projections of $1.2 million. So development master plan. What is a development master plan? As part of the approval process for the initial phase of restoration and improvements at Warm Mineral Springs Park, a development master plan was required. This is a long-term planning document that provides a conceptual layout of a proposed development. Although most city projects are not required to go through this process, the DMP is required for all development that takes place within the city's activity centers, and Warm Mineral Springs Park is located within the Springs Activity Center. So in conjunction with the DMP, a fiscal impact analysis was conducted to evaluate the cost of new development to the city's overall operating budget. In the case of Warm Mineral Springs Park, the model that was utilized showed an operating loss for the city, and there's been some misunderstanding that this fiscal analysis was actually the operating budget for the park. It's not reflective of the actual operating budget for Warm Mineral Springs Park, which again, as I stated, has shown positive gains since the city took ownership of the park. In fact, the park is on track this year to meet our revenue projections of $1.3 million. And with that, I'm going to ask Mike Bulow to come up.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. The neighborhood expansion water, wastewater, sewer program is a proposed program to expand water and wastewater infrastructure throughout the city. We were given direction to propose a plan with the expansion. There's 25 sewer sheds throughout the city, and part of it was due to the Senate Bill 712, which was put into action signed into a bill on June 30th, 2020 by Governor Ron DeSantis, and it is known as the Clean Waterway Act. The Act covers a wide range of water quality protection provisions aimed at minimizing the impact of known sources of nutrient pollutants, realigning the state's resources to enhance the protection of Florida's environment, and strengthening regulatory requirements. So in this bill, it talks a lot about septic tanks and action plans. And what we're doing here is putting a plan together. We have the master plan, and so we actually have a date now that we're going to hold a special meeting on May 17th at 5:01, to where we will discuss this with the community, and we encourage the community to come out. The the action we're looking for is to have a plan approved to go to design. What the design will do is enable us to apply for grant funding. So the grant funding was just approved through legislation. They set aside $500 million for septic to sewer programs throughout the state. I did just read an article that City of Jacksonville is actually estimated to receive $6 million this coming year. And part of that is to offset the cost and lessen the impact to homeowners. Oh, thank you. Sorry. But we don't know what the cost is going to be on an actual plan until we have a design. So at this May 17th meeting, we will be asking Commission to approve going forward with a design. The design will take 10 months to a year to create. So it's about a year to design the first phase of this master planning. And what that does is there are certain benchmarks that are in the bill that are requirements. And really all we're trying to do is plan for what could come out of it. It's just like a hurricane. We plan for a hurricane. We make sure we have bottled water. We make sure we have canned food. We make sure, and we prepare for the worst and we hope for the best. So that's really what we're trying to do here is just have a plan in place, and we're preparing for the worst, hoping for the best. And if we don't have a plan in place, my thinking behind it is to be proactive instead of reactive. And it's our job to educate the commission, to make sure they're aware of what's going on, and the public gets involved as well, because we have to make the best decision going forward as a city as a whole. And it takes the city to come together to realize that. There is planning. They will be, monitoring waterways. They will be doing basin management plans. There's a term for that. So action plans, I'm sorry, basin management action plans. And there is certain deadlines that are, there's certain tasks that will be completed. The septic tank system is actually being converted over from the Department of Health to the Department of Environmental Protection. So FDEP will now oversee and regulate that. There's talk in the rule for inspections, and that'll occur on septic tanks. So this is a plan to go forward. There was one on here I wanted to see, because there's several pages of action. They're all in the Senate bill. Very fun to read some of that stuff. So, but there is one in here that talks about a nutrient basin management action plan must include on-site sewage treatment and disposal remediation plans, and when it is need to restore an impaired water body. So that is July 1st, 2025. There has to be a basin management action plan and what the remediation plans are going to be as one of the benchmarks in there. And that's where we're at now. And I could tell you that we did the numbers on at our current funding rate and what we're doing. It's going to take 900 years to install water and sewer throughout the city of Northport. So that's where we're at the current funding rate. Moving forward, with the grant monies coming down, this is coming down from state legislation from the state. We can get on board with that, hopefully lessen the impact. There is an estimated cost that's been out there from surrounding communities throughout the state that the average cost is $27,000. That's part of what we're pushing for the grants and have a plan in place so we can at least submit for the grant funding, to hopefully find out different ways and, how can we change that to where it's not impacting the homeowner so much. One thing I will correct from the last meeting that I said is, this is a proposed master plan, which we did bring to commission. We got approval of commission, their desire for us to remove forward. And I wanted to know, I asked staff, and I'm still learning some of the commission rules, let's say, that at the previous meeting, there was no action and there was no acceptance of this master plan because it was at a workshop. And commission cannot give an approval or action at a workshop. So we will ask in a meeting to accept the plan so we can create that plan moving forward. So that this is why there was no official plan, so to say, in place, because it actually has not been approved by commission as an official plan of their acceptance to move forward. We do have a website. Whoops, did I go? Did I go the wrong way? Oh, where's the one with the? Oh, that's the website. I'm sorry, that is the one. You went ahead of me. We do have a website, cityofnorthport.com, wastewater expansion. Please go on there, check the link. There's a lot of information on there. So check it out and hopefully see everybody on May 17th to have a good discussion. Thanks. And Monica Randall will come up to talk about price widening.
Good afternoon, Monica Bramble, Acting Public Works Director. I'd like to give an update on the Price Boulevard Widening Project, a project that will affect a lot of City of Northport residents. So this project goes just west of Toledo, Blade Boulevard, to right before Sumter Boulevard. And it's designed to have 4 travel lanes, 2 each way, with a middle turn lane. There's going to be a 10-foot wide multi-use path on both sides of the street, and it's going to be curb and gutter with a 2-foot utility strip for mailboxes and signs and lights. And lighting will be on both sides of the road. Now that we have covered more of the area with asphalt, there needs to be more stormwater ponds, so that's part of the project. And there will be landscaping around the stormwater ponds and some of the raised medians. And there's going to be new traffic signals at 3 intersections, Cranberry Boulevard, Chamberlain Boulevard, and Salford Boulevard. And then because we have the road tore up, Utilities is going to do some improvements while they can get under the road. So this project has been designed and all the stormwater ponds that are needed have been purchased. If we built it today, the 2021 costs are a little over $47 million. We don't have that in our pocket, so we are looking at funding options to get this project moving. And once those funds are secured, then we can move forward with construction. So with that.
Thank you, Monica. We're now going into our questions and answer period. So we would love to invite the public to come up and ask questions, provide input, and of course, for all the folks that are online, if you have any questions, we are available to respond. Thank you,
Yep.
Josh.
So if you have a question, you can just come right up here to the front. You can fire away, or it can just be a statement, tell us how great we are. I'm sure that's what you want to do. We do have some questions that have come in online, if nobody's ready to go, so we can fire a couple of those off. Yes, sir. Sir, I'm gonna ask you, I know, can you please, we can't hear you at home if you don't come up. Well, then we can't hear you. Don't you want people to hear your question? Okay. We'll get somebody here to answer your question. The question was, how do we define nutrient for the septic tank? You can stay right there, Wayne.
Mike Acosta, you want to come down for that? Utilities engineering manager is here. He will come down for that.
Mike Acosta, Utilities Engineering Manager. So nutrients is defined in wastewater world by the DEP and the EPA as nitrogen and phosphorus primarily. Those two ingredients. There's multiple different things that make that up. And the primary ones that come out of that are nitrogen and phosphorus.
Nitrogen content in the air is 78%.
That's correct. Oh, the question, the comment was that nitrogen is 78% of the atmosphere. That is indeed correct. 21% oxygen and a bunch of other stuff.
All right, thanks. Madison, if you want to read one of the questions, or ma'am, if you're here, we'll start with you. Thank you.
I have a question. With all these elaborate master plans going on and all this new stuff going on, but yet there's nothing resolved about River Road. That was expanded just for, I think, a half a mile, and then funds ran out a few years ago, and now it's at a halt. Now, I did read somewhere where there was a road swap agreement, wins county commission praise with the state and the county planning underway for River Road improvements, and that was back October 30th, 2019. Nothing's going on. And yet there's so much building going on in River Road and just north of River Road. There's 9 communities in the Welland Park, AKA the West Villages. And they're predicting 30,000 homes will be built by 10 years. And it looks like it's going so fast, building so fast, I think it's going to be shorter than just 10 years. Now, River Road is a road that's an evacuation road. Okay, and all these communities going in, okay, if we have a disaster, if we have to have an evacuation, we're not going to be able to make it to I-75. And then we have even Inglewood that uses River Road to get to I-75 for evacuation. And now I know that that it's the state and the county that's going to have the responsibility of this. But there's something here that says that Northport will be donating $6 million towards this. Now, even though the state and the county are responsible, I believe that our commission or our city, our officials should push this, because I know how South County, I know how Sarasota County is. They'll drag their feet when it comes to Northport. I remember back in around 80s and the 90s where we tried to get schools in here, and we had to, it was like pulling their liver out of them. And but we had enough squawking, and we did enough meetings, and we forced it, and we pushed it, and we pushed it, and we finally got our schools. I'd like to see that happen with River Road. I'm really concerned about this. I mean, it's a road travel, well traveled, just for the workforce. Like they said, you know, who was saying that 90% is going out of Northport for work, and and I've seen where I'm going towards I-75, and I see traffic coming towards 41 from I-75, coming to Northport or going to Inglewood, and the line is up from all the way to, was it Rambler's Rest? Now that's ridiculous. That's terrible. And that's just a regular workday. What's it going to be like if we have an evacuation?
Thank you.
I'm
ma'am.
really concerned about this.
Thank you, ma'am. All valid points. I'm going to bring up Monica Bramwell, our interim public works director, to address some of that.
Okay, so I'll address the questions that I can. So, and I'm going to speak specifically on the section of River Road that goes from US 41 to I-75.
Right.
So that section was transferred, the ownership of that was transferred from Sarasota County to the Florida Department of Transportation in June of 2020. So it's under the responsibility of the Florida Department of Transportation, and they anticipate that construction improvements will begin this summer or fall. Then there is an agreement between the city of Northport and Sarasota County that helps in the funding of that. I don't know the specifics of that, but it is that the city of Northport does provide some funding through some transportation impact fees to Sarasota County for
Said
that.
$6 million that
$6
we're
million,
contributing. So with that being said, and then all these other master plans going in and the cost of those, what's it going to be for us residents, the citizens of Northport? I mean, my goodness, there's a lot of expenses here. And we're not Naples. We're not, millionaires here, So, I don't know. You said there's a specific time they're going to start this then?
They anticipate this summer, fall. Yes.
Okay, are you going to hold them to this? Are you going to push this? Are you going to, we need all the help we can get from the city of Northport to push this.
Thank you, ma'am. I can tell you that is definitely a regional asset that we've had many, many meetings with Charlotte County, Sarasota County, the state to get that improved. So your voice from your elected officials here in the city of Northport is heard. And they are working to get that done. It looks like we're getting somewhere. So that road definitely needs to be improved. There's no question about it. Well, ma'am, we're trying to keep you to it. Everybody's got a couple minutes.
I just want to say, like this gentleman was saying, we got to think ahead, okay? So we really need to think ahead about this road.
Yeah, well, the fact that they're working in the next year to do it means we've been thinking ahead, for sure. Yeah. If anybody else wants to come up with a question, if you don't feel like you're comfortable going up, our great fire chief has a microphone. He'll take it right to you. That is service. Sir, please.
Yes, my name is Steve Yeager, and I live over in Cypress Falls. So I have a question with regard to the surtax, the 1% surtax. My understanding now, it is dedicated to projects that the city has to identify and use those resources for. So I don't know when you start to assess whether or not that should be continued, and if so, what it will be used for. But I would advocate that that 1% surtax be targeted to the general fund. I think because the city is growing, that it should have discretion on where those tax refunds need to go, and it shouldn't be narrowly defined for certain types of projects. So the other aspect here is that I have a question about the Northport Aquatic Center. So can somebody project what the deficits are going to be over the next 5 years? Now, the reason I ask that question, for every project that you developed, you've got downstream impacts. And usually means you're going to have some kind of cost to support that project. So there's a schedule that you prepare in your budget materials that shows those downstream impacts. So as you develop more infrastructure or other projects that require more expense, you have to take that in consideration for your future budgeting. So that's why I say, let's take the 1% into the general fund so you have more flexibility in addressing a lot of different needs rather than building more aquatic centers.
Or we can answer, let's go through, we'll answer those questions. So 2 we've heard so far. I can address the surtax question. So great idea. I think every local government could wish that we could use that extra penny sales tax to go into funding operating, but that's simply just not allowed. We don't dictate that. That is a revenue source from sales tax on goods and services. And when you had asked, when can we make a decision to be able to use that money? Well, the surtax 4 vote is going to be happening in November of 2022. So the county drives that and the city supplement, and we provide our list of projects, but surtax dollars can only be used for capital infrastructure projects and expansion of current capital projects.
No, I understand that. When the renewal comes out, I would advocate that the city advocate at the county that it be targeted for the general fund. I understand you have to have another vote or a renewal or something. That's when you can change where that tax can be targeted. That's my suggestion.
Unfortunately can't target that. We're voting to accept that extra penny tax for another 15 years, and again, can only be allocated to capital expenditures. So
why can't you change what the allocation is going to be?
Just believe that's just state-driven, just part of.
I'd like some more information on that because that's not the way I understand it.
I'm going to leave my card
All
here,
right.
and I'll definitely email me, and I'll certainly provide that information. There's a lot of online resources that provide breakdown of all state revenues and how they're to be used, how we're governed by the state to use it for those purposes. We get audited, so more news ahead of that, and be happy to provide that.
Okay,
I'll
thank
leave
you.
it right here.
And
then can I just go back? We'll be able to address the questions I think you had on the Aquatic Center.
Yeah.
The Aquatic Center, in the development of the CIP for the Aquatic Center, we did have the 5-year outlook for facility management and operations. I don't have that in front of me. However, we can get you some information on that.
Approximately don't know what it is?
I would
per year?
hesitate to guess at a
Okay.
number.
All right. The other question I have, a lot of talk about growth in terms of population. So where I've come from, our municipalities were required to develop what's called a 10-year comprehensive plan. And that comprehensive plan brings all of the infrastructure things together. Parks, roads, bridges, sewer, water, all those things. So that you are projecting based upon your current population, growth, that type of thing, what you're going to need to support that growth. Does Northport have such a plan?
Sir, I'd like to invite somebody from planning to provide a response. Tom? You can come up or you can answer right there.
Good afternoon, Tom Sikarsky, Planning Department. So the City of Northport does have a comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan is a 20-year plan.
And so, for example, if I look at Toledo Boulevard, when is that going to be expanded?
This would also, the comprehensive plan, we do work with planning across multiple different departments, divisions. So this would also be a question with Public Works across for road expansion.
But would it have that kind of?
It would have the
activity on
level of detail. It kind of reaches the goals for the different expansions. I don't know if we'd go in that level of detail for Toledo Blade.
I mean, it's just an example of.
Sure. So we can provide you with.
Because you're going to have to add roads, you're going to have to redo roads, you're going to have to widen roads, just like prices being widened. So, in the future, when would you do that? Okay. Is my time up? I have one other comment, I guess.
Go ahead, sir, please.
First part of the meeting, we talked about millage rates. We talked about how millage rate went down last year, which is true. Again, where I come from, I tended to focus on not the millage rate, but the total expenses and where they're being spent and what kinds of increases are occurring and what we're getting for those dollars. So millage rate is kind of a complicated measure because it's influenced by a lot of different things. So where you have a city that's growing, which we are, you're adding units, which you're adding market value, and then you're also increasing market values on existing homes. And granted, you're limited as to how much of that taxable value is taxable, but you have an inflated aspect to expenses built in simply because property values are increasing. So I would rather have you folks focus on expenses that's increasing, where it's being increased, and why. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your service as well. You know, I mean, Northport's I know you're talking about a 20-year plan. I think it's very difficult. Northport, the good news is 60,000 plus lots were planned 60 years ago. And it makes it, Northport has some challenges in that regard. And the same as any general development company, everyone who owns every one of those lots is a private owner of those lots and has rights to build on it. And how we, you know, the growth issue is kind of a difficult one for Northport because much of it's already there. It's tough for us to tell people who've owned a lot for 30 years who live in Michigan and they can no longer come down and build on their lot. And Northport's similar to Port St. Lucie and every other general development community out there. So it is a challenge. There's no question about it. But I'll try and get you some of those more specific details on those roads for sure. Anybody else wants to come up, or we can have our fire chief. Of course, his microphone is red. Makes sense.
Afternoon. Question, when you picked the project area for expansion, initial project area, is that based on the density of the sewers? Okay. Have you, or are you going to do point source testing throughout the city in order to determine specific areas that have the impact?
That will be set up through the state with their monitoring requirements as far as the Senate bill. And that'll be part of the Basin Action Management Plan that will be put into effect for the monitoring points itself.
Will it be part of your plan? Your initial plan? Are you going to develop a plan of impact, yet you don't have an idea where the specific impact is without doing point source testing?
The first area that was selected was an area that would get the most septic tanks converted over to a sewer. That would take more septic tanks offline. But I understand what you're asking. I don't have that answer right now. I don't know if our engineering manager has that answer. For that, I know that we focused on and we were given direction to what would be the best impact area as far as population of septic tanks in an area. Because this is the Blue Ridge. The first area is the Blue Ridge North-South area.
Yeah, no, I understand that in your area. That's my area. That's why. Okay. But as I said, I don't understand. Does the utility do point source testing?
We do point source testing at the wastewater treatment plant. We don't do non-point source testing of the stormwater that comes in. I think that I'm not the stormwater person, so I can't answer the question. I don't know if I didn't see Elizabeth Wong here, but that's where the stormwater manager is. But you're absolutely right. There were really three ways, excuse me, that the master plan developed where to start. Because there's 29 sewer sheds. Where do you start? The place that was chosen was simply based on the density, the number of homes per the number of lots. It's very simple. And closest to the existing infrastructure, the existing city infrastructure.
The
Fort Springs
infill.
primarily.
The infill area.
Right. So it was based on those two things. And as Mike said, the chances of getting grant funding when you're doing a $5 million project or a $3 million project, and you're not taking any septic tanks out of service, the chances of getting that funding from the state is remote. I won't say zero, but it's remote. They're about water quality improvements. So the more septic tanks that come offline on a project, the better chance you're going to get funding out of the state.
Does the utility department have any idea what the primary pollutant is within the city of Northport?
In regard to where?
Water quality.
Water
We'll go
quality?
there.
I don't know. Because I'd be speculating, and I don't want to speculate.
And that's why point source testing is so important throughout the city. And I would also suggest that you do sediment testing too at your point sources to get a history of what the pollutants are. Would probably help a lot. Also, what does it state within the code as it relates to mandatory hookup? I read someplace in the code where if it goes by your house, you're required to hook up. Can somebody tell me where that's at? And if I'm right?
When a sewer line, it's a state, let me see if I have it. You have 365 days to connect. Once the sewer line is run in front of, here it is. It is Florida statute, chapter 381, Florida State Code is connection to existing sewage system. And basically it says that they would receive 365 days after the installation of a wastewater system, and that they must connect to the system.
So it's mandated by law.
Correct. It's, yes, chapter 381 of the Florida statutes.
Mandatory hookups mandated by law. That is the biggest issue with the majority of the residents, is a mandatory hookup, which is something I believe we could negate. How, I have no idea, but through waivers and so on, possibly. One more thing there was. You have to forgive me, I had to lose my train of thought. I'll remember it. Thank you very much.
You can come back up. Thank you, sir. We're going to go to some, believe it or not, people yell at us online a lot. We have some questions, and they got on us. We had the same meeting, just if you don't know, we had this same meeting a few nights ago, so that people who work during the day could come to that. So we got a lot of questions there. It's a good resource. If you're here today or if you're watching home, I encourage you to go back and watch that. There were a lot of good questions that the community asked with that too. But we have some that have come in online, people watching from home. So, Ms. Madison, if you don't mind.
All right, this one's going to be for War Mineral Springs and the Aquatic Park, kind of as a combo pack. So it is, what steps are being taken for the War Mineral Springs and Aquatic Park to become profitable? And kind of tying in with that, how and where does the city promote them?
Sure. I'm going to answer the first part of that and then have Laura Ansel address some of the marketing. But as far as War Mineral Springs Park, with this initial phase of restoration that we're looking to do, there are some areas of the buildings that are not being used, are not available to be used right now due to its condition, which would allow us to expand some of the spa services that happen there, as well as reopen the restaurant that used to operate out of there. Both of those would bring in additional revenue opportunities. At the Aquatic Center, we are always looking for new programming opportunities. We have rentals, and I will let Tricia weigh in on that as well.
We are always looking for opportunities to increase revenue and decrease expenses. We've recently come to the commission showing after analyzing the first few months of being able to operate with some tweaks to staffing hours, by changing how many hours the competition pool is open compared to how many hours the full facility is open, we can reduce some staff costs. We have been reaching out to many providers for different programs, events, bring more people in the doors. So we've changed our hours based upon surveys that we've heard from patrons saying when they think they'll be able to be there. And we're really monitoring every single day. Actually, every half an hour, we're counting the people so that we can see when there is a demand to be in the facility, make sure that our hours are aligning appropriately, and we'll continue to come back to the commission with recommendations to adjust so we can reduce expenses.
Laura, go ahead. We just had 2 record months at
Yeah.
Warren Mineral Springs, so I'll let you.
We did. I was excited to get the chance to talk about marketing. So, for the record, Laura Ansel, good afternoon. I'm the Marketing and Outreach Coordinator with Parks and Recreation. We do develop a comprehensive integrated marketing plan annually, and we do that in support of our CAPRA standard. It's 3.43, but we also do that because it's just a good practice in general for any business or organization to have a good marketing plan. In the last fiscal year, we completed 140 projects that delivered almost 4 million impressions, and we measure that every step along the way. So if we spend $1, if we boost something, if we get some PR through earned media, we measure our reach on that so that we can determine what our cost per thousand is on all of our efforts and our initiatives. That allows us to review it and analyze our results and the numbers and determine what would be the most efficient use of both our time and our money and our other resources. So with that being said, a few of the things we do have a landing page on the website. I'm happy to say that 2 of the top 3 pages on the entire city website since January of this year is the Aquatic Center and Warm Mineral Springs Park. We actually have more visitors to the Warm Mineral Springs Park landing page than the homepage. So that's kind of just a fun little fact. We do press releases. We have e-notifications. We work with, we conduct a lot of outreach as well. We do partner. I know part of the question, I believe, was about what we do with Visit Sarasota and other partners like that. We do have a good partnership with Visit Sarasota. We're working on increasing our efforts there and what we're doing. In the past year alone, they've come out and paid for a 360 tour of the Northport Aquatic Center that will be going live in the next month on our website. They have a profile for both Warm Mineral Springs Park and the Northport Aquatic Center on their page. We have an ad that we print in their travel guide that is distributed at all the visitor centers for Warm Mineral Springs Park. It's also at the new Welland Park Visitor Center as well. And then we've also partnered with them for some earned media opportunities. So Warm Mineral Springs Park, for instance, was just featured on y'all.com. So they came out, sent a travel writer, and did a little piece on the park and its history and what it's like to come and visit there. One of the new things that arose out of our marketing analysis roll-up report was the opportunity to try some Google SEM advertising. SEM, for those of you who are not familiar with the cool lingo, is search engine marketing. And so that's basically a list of keywords that we generate, and we focus keyword search marketing ads that get served. So if you go in there and you search Springs, Northport, or you search things to do, Northport, outdoor activities, we generate a keyword list and we specifically target folks who are searching for related terms, and we'll serve them an ad. And that is running right now currently for both the Northport Aquatic Center and Warm Mineral Springs Park. As Director Fundheller shared, for the second month in a row, we had record-setting month for Warm Mineral Springs Park in both attendance and revenue. The park had 18,355 visits and generated a gross revenue of $229,826 in April 2021. That visitation was in large part driven by the Google SEM campaign that we're running right now called Experience Vintage Florida. Those ads, since they started on February 24th, 2021, have garnered us 53.6 thousand impressions, 3.94 thousand clicks, 73 calls to the park, and almost 31,000, 30.8 thousand location actions. So a location action is when someone has served the ad and they click the thing saying, give me directions to this place. And it is an indicator that someone intends to visit that location. So it's a strong way for us to kind of really track how people are moving through that funnel, right? From being interested to researching to making a decision to act. So We also conduct a lot of outreach. So we have a monthly radio show on WKDW 97.5. We have informational booths at all of our city events. We give presentations. We just had a great breakfast with the local Chamber of Commerce where we talked about our efforts and initiatives. We've given ecotourism presentations. We've worked with the Rotary Club. We have printed ads that are running with Florida Weekly. So we have some printed initiatives as well. We have our own printed guides. We have the outdoor activity guide. We have a brochure for War Mineral Springs Park that is in all of our visitor centers as well and distributed through our partners with Visit Sarasota. We do have a Peach Jar. We work with the schools to distribute flyers and information about our upcoming events and activities through that Peach Jar platform. And let's see, we've worked with Northport Sun, Sarasota Herald Tribune. They come and they cover a lot of our events. They'll take pictures and things at our activities, and that's another outreach initiative. And social media, I cannot leave out social media. So we do a lot of not just Google, but we also boost some of our events and activities out there. In social media terms, since October 1st, we've garnered 517,967 of total reach. And that's just from our organic impressions alone. And that's on our Northport Parks and Rec Facebook page. And these are things we're not boosting or spending money on. We also have a presence next door, Twitter, Instagram, Pinterest. Follow us. Call me if you need to know where we are. So, any other questions with it?
Somebody asked.
All right.
We got the answer. Thank you, Laura. Does anybody else have a question here in the audience? Yes, sir. Do you want to come up? I got this fancy microphone now. We'll go kind of back and forth between questions here and just we have a few stacking up online.
Okay. Good afternoon.
Thank you.
Since they passed the Clean Water Act, Governor DeSantis passed everything down to the health department. They had a subcommittee meeting and decided that the health department couldn't make a total accurate evaluation of the problems. So they passed it on and got the environmental department involved. The meeting that I heard and saw and read online stated that they were going to attack the main problems first, which was like the Keys, the Miami-Dade area, the Jacksonville area, and parts of Tampa, but they've already involved in some of that, correcting some of the issues on it. They also mentioned at the time it's going to take 20, 30 years because they want to control or they want to correct the issues on the main waterways first. So why the inland, he even stated that Governor DeSantis stated that with his committee also verifying that agriculture and mosaic are the two main causes of the pollution in the main waterways. So his recommendations, and he even admitted and said his committee admitted and the scientists admitted that the septic tanks, unless they're usually over 30 years old, they haven't been maintained, are not an issue. Have we proven anything in Northport, since we're an inland community, have we proven that we are a cause or contributing to it at all, the pollution problem?
No, the part of it was the springs as well that was mentioned, and we do have 2 springs. And like I said, this is a planning and a preparing for. They are going for national designation for our 2 springs, Warm Mineral Springs and Little Salt Spring. That could elevate us. Not saying it will, but it could elevate us on that list of impact, potential impact, or sensitive areas. And this is, we are simply trying to put a plan in place. This plan
But how much
can
money
happen
was
in
spent
5
on it?
years. This plan can happen in 10 years. We don't know that, but we're asked to put a plan together, and that's what we're trying to do.
And who asked to put this plan together? Because according to
It's part of
the
the,
environmental department, they've gone to specific areas to ask people to put a plan together. They haven't required, it's not anywhere is Northport mentioned.
correct. Yes.
So why are we spending all this money? We've spent a ton of money already on this. And they're gonna run out, which they already said, they're gonna run out of grant money, federal and state grant money, by taking care of the major waterways before they even get to the inland communities. Doesn't make sense.
And
It sounds to me like we're just wasting a lot of money and a lot of time.
And I think
And the taxpayers are paying for it.
the Basin Management Action Plan will tell us a lot, which we are a direct influence of Charlotte Harbor, the Myakka River.
Indirect.
Indirect, yes, but all our canals come through and they all go out to
Correct.
Charlotte Harbor, Gulf of Mexico.
Any testing been done on our canals?
No.
Ever?
Not our canals, no. And that's a stormwater question, stormwater
Right.
manager. We don't test the stormwater runoff, no.
So it looks like we're just wasting money and time. Because if they run out of grant money for all the other major waterways in the state, and Northport has proven that we don't contribute, even if we only contribute 1% of the pollution or cause of pollution, we've just wasted all that money.
We got
You might have something.
Julie Belia. I can't keep track of your titles. Sorry.
Juliana Belia, Acting Assistant City Manager. In accordance with the Senate Bill 712 Clean Waterways Act, that is something that everyone in Florida has to pay attention to, and it's going to be evolving. It's not something that is ground in stone, and today they know exactly whatever every municipality and county within Florida is going to have to do. That being said, as Mr. Vullo mentioned earlier, the city of Northport, we have put together a master plan for water and sewer expansions, okay? That being said, that is not an implementation plan. What the state is going to start doing is they're going to make everyone in Florida start testing their waters. They're going to have certain parameters and certain things you will be required to test for. That being said, depending upon what is found, then the state will start putting together regulations and telling us what they would like us to do. Those types of things have not yet been decided. So in order to do our due diligence in a city, that is why we are starting these exercises and starting these pre-planning efforts. And as Mr. Vullo said, it's going to take many, 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 many years to expand the water and the sewer, primarily the sewer, throughout the city of Northport. And it would have to be done in small segments of geographic areas within the city. It's not something realistically we could have done in a year. So it's not like the entire population would have to, say, oh my gosh, in a year we're going to have to come up with a certain amount of money to do this. The Utilities Department has hired a consultant to assist them with this process. And we're going to start doing, or the consultant is going to assist us to start doing a lot more public outreach. They have a lot of good knowledge about transitioning from septic to sewer. But this is a very long process. This is not something that's going to be done
So
in a
we're
year.
putting a cart in front of the horse.
No, sir.
And also, why are we hiring consultants to do work that we hired engineers for? Okay, because I'm an engineer.
Yes, sir.
All right, and I went to college, got 2 master's degrees, and then you turn around and we got people that should be able to do our own studies just as well as the consultants. But we're paying an outside firm to do it. Why?
Because
I mean, if they're not qualified to do that, the engineers that we have on staff,
yes, sir.
then we need to find ones that can. It's not that complicated.
Well, it's extremely complicated.
No,
And it's-
right
and
now
it's-
it's
and there's
not
a
that
lot of-
complicated because
Okay.
they haven't come out with all the ways they want to do things. The environmental department has the ball right now.
Yes,
And
sir.
what they've said, they're gonna take care of the major waterways first. And it's gonna take years and years for them to do that.
Yes, sir.
We're an inland community.
Mm-hmm.
We shouldn't even be looking at this yet. Not for maybe 10 years, 15 years, till they have a plan put together. They don't even have a plan put together yet.
No, but we do need to start pre-planning because this is going to happen. This is gonna happen.
And I agree
It
with
may, for
Pardon?
us, it may,
Yeah,
if we keep growing and we hit maybe
we just want to
200,000
be prepared
people.
because the fact of the matter is, when we are built out, we will have 250,000 population here at the city. We will have 250,000 people living in the city of Northport on 104 square miles. And to have that many septic tanks will be very, very challenging. It's probably very unrealistic. So that's why now we want to try to prepare ourselves and have a plan in place to accommodate that.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, but I think the taxpayers are getting screwed just like we did on the roads issue with the bond issue. They were supposed to have all the roads in Northport redone within so many years by the bond setup. What happened to that? They didn't even get halfway done.
No, sir. We completed that. We completed
Did?
200.
My whole neighborhood, there's like 6 or 8 streets in my neighborhood that never got touched.
We completed.
I can bring you a whole list of streets.
I understand that. We still have some we have to finish. But as part of the road bond program, that was finished. There's another plan called a 7-year plan, which we are continuing to finish. They're 2 separate plans.
Yeah. Well, I tend to disagree. And I think the people that we're wasting money right now, we're getting the cart in front of the horse for sure. Way ahead of time.
Thank you, sir. I mean, it's better, I think for the most part, sometimes it's better to have a plan and be prepared and not need it than to not have a plan and need it. Same reason we plan for hurricanes and every other thing that might happen in the city. So, I can tell you this much, it is not fun for staff to go through this issue. We're being accused of everything under the sun. And I think it's our responsibility to the taxpayers to have this city be prepared as best that it can. And, we hear a lot of false information out there. We can definitely agree to disagree on what needs to happen when, but, we're getting accused of being on the take on some of these issues, and it's just, it's absurd. Nobody here is doing anything to line their own pockets. I can assure you that. So with that said, we have another question online. How fun.
Okay, this one, I just wanted to be sure we were able to get this on the meeting so that the public and everybody else can, get this information. This will probably be directed toward, Carey finance people. How and when can we get a copy of the 2022 proposed budget? And is there a schedule for the 2022 budget meetings?
Thank you, Madison. That's a great question. So the schedule for the workshops for the commission to review the proposed budget is going to happen on June 15th through June 17th of this year. That is when a copy of the proposed 22 budget will be available. And for many of you, that will be available online. You can look at it, you can print it out. If for some reason you don't have a computer, you can certainly call our budget office and we could provide a copy and put it out front. Thank you.
Sir, I got you a mic now.
Thank you, Josh. United States of America is the country where you have a right to life, liberty, and pursuing of happiness.
It's green. We just got to hit the button. We got to speak.
Okay. In the United States of America, we have a right to life, liberty, and pursuing of happiness. Liberty been taken away from me, and I am very unhappy. I don't see any happiness when you all over here taking this happiness away. In the charter to City of Northport Corporation, you should read, because what you said, Josh, is not correct. It says that voters, people, bring this up to the commission and to you, ideas, and they should be resolved economically as possible. I don't see any anything over here be done economically, let me say something good to you. This is the citizen guide to budget, probably prepared by the financial department. And in it, it states that the last 2 years, which is good, the total budget is 170 million. And we have a 350 employees, part 20, I mean, that 21, which is probably part-timers. So 40% of the 170 million goes to the expenses for salaries, wages, and benefits. So if you multiply 40% by 170, you have a $68 million in change. If you divide it by 735, so cost for us, for each employee is $92,810. I don't make this up. I didn't prepare, and I thank you for that. And the next issue, on page 5A of the CAF 2019, which can be obtainable from your website, it states that the city have a surplus $95 million. I want the comment on that money. Why are you hoarding that money? Give it back. Put up for the road or whatever. I think that widening the price is the mistake. There should be one service lane added for garbage trucks and the post vehicles, so the traffic would flow much better. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. I'll come get that for you in just a minute while Madison's reading our next question online.
Okay, this one's going to be for economic development. So this says that you had stated 90% of workers leave Northport to work. Do we know what type of work they are leaving for? Do you use that information to attract companies to Northport for employment opportunities to retain some of that 90% workforce in Northport? And there's another one, but I don't want to pepper you with too much stuff. We'll start with that one, Mel.
Thanks, Madison. I've only been with the city of Northport for a handful of weeks, so in an effort to give the best answer with more history, I'm going to turn it over to the manager of Economic Development Division, Mel Thomas.
Hi, Mel Thomas. So I think I'm understanding the first question to be job creation. Is that right?
Yeah, what are they leaving for? And how do you work to attract companies to Northport for employment opportunities or retention?
Okay, so the question about why people are leaving is because the city of Northport does not have appropriate numbers of industry and commercial enterprise. That's done, if you think historically about how the city was devised, we are a platted city and we're platted residentially. So there are only certain places within the city that have been designed to accept certain kinds of work. And those are mostly in the areas of commercial and small enterprise kinds of things. So larger industries are simply not here. And part of that problem is land assembly. We do not have a methodology that's fully intact for us to put together smaller parcels of land for large development. So in lieu of that, while this city has been growing, people look for work other places. The cost of housing here has been very reasonable. It's a good place to live, good place to educate your kids, but that 90% of those who work go someplace else to find their jobs. That means they go north into Sarasota proper or beyond into Bradenton, and then they go south into Charlotte and Lee counties. Most of us who come from other places, like I'm from Atlanta, so an hour's drive is nothing for me, and it's not for a lot of people who come here to work. So that's been the migratory pattern for employment this far. What do they go for, the question asks? Well, it's pretty simple. It's what they're trained in. People look for places to live where there's quality of life and they take their job skills with them. And what that means for us in Sarasota County and the greater MSA, the MSA is the Metropolitan Statistical Area. That's our drive pattern. What that means for us is healthcare, it's professional services, it's IT and in the cloud creative services, it's engineering, it's construction. Those are the kinds of jobs people leave to go do elsewhere. And when we get organized sufficiently, and we are working toward that at a rapid pace to bring those jobs into us, then those people will, guess what? They're going to reverse the trajectory, or they're going to stay where they live in order to work. So to finish that great pattern of live, work, and play, right? And that's what Northport is headed for. So I think that should answer that question, yeah?
That does. And then I'm going to piggyback off of that with another one that's
All
on here.
righty, Dave.
Okay, all right.
Throw me your best
The
one.
next one is please state some specific actions being taken to attract development and job creation.
Okay, I love that
To
question.
keep them here.
I love that question.
Did you write it?
I did. Thank you, Josh, for thinking I'm that smart. Basically, what I want to preface by saying is economic development is a tool in the toolbox for a city, a jurisdiction, any place actually, to increase quality of life. And that is done primarily through the economic patterns of its citizenry. If you don't have jobs and you don't have a way to make money, businesses make money, people make money, and if you don't have a way to spend it, then you can't encourage the economic growth of anywhere, right? So what we do currently in economic development is we look at business attraction, and we look at business retention, and we look at business expansion. So if we're not doing all three of those things really well, then we cannot satisfy the appetite for an economic growth that works for this city. I hope that makes sense to you. But the bottom line is we are currently doing multiple things. I'm going to give you some really good examples. You can follow the path of these if you want. On April 13th, we brought before the commission something we term the Camoin Study. It is actually an economic development market feasibility research study that we had done for us to take a look at both. I'm going to put my glasses on because I don't want to miss anything here. Read off my little cheat sheet. To identify sites that require investment to increase competition for the city of Northport. So what that says is there are people all around us who are doing better than we are in the way of manufacturing jobs, creating jobs, diverse jobs, jobs of a high-paying quality. And in order to fit that competition, fit into that competition well, we have to figure out what are the industries that work here, because we are a pristine and environmentally correct city. And furthermore, we have certain populations of workers that just cluster here. So you have to know, what is your workforce made up of? What does your city allow itself to zone itself for and then build to? And then what does the future hold for what work is going to look like? Look what COVID did to us. COVID changed the way we work, and therefore it changed the kinds of work that are rising to the top in demand. So demand jobs are those that you can do online and from your home. And you know that to be true, right? So this study is going one step further, helping us to identify those lands that we do have in Northport that are already identified that are lacking something that keeps us from being competitive. And in most cases, that is infrastructure. We're missing water, sewer, fiber, electricity, you name it, a utility, right? And you have to build those things. If you don't build it, they won't come. And that's just about as simple as it gets. So in order for us to continue in that vein, that's what we've done. Further, we are looking for financial tools to make that happen. You can't build it out of nothing. You have to have people build it. So you have to pay people to build things. So we're looking for the general methods that you would assume. We've got some CARES Act money coming down for reimbursement for things, and we can use it, interestingly. On the 13th of April, when this study was presented to our commission, they were bold, brave, smart to step out and say, we have money coming from the CARES Act in reimbursement to the city, and we're going to take that money and we're going to put it into infrastructure. So they are doing that in the way of some of these identified lands that we are seeing up and down 75 at Toledo Blade, at Sumter Road, further inland to right here at city center, practically at Price and Toledo, a little further that way, Heron Creek right here, and I'm missing one. 41, somebody speak up, 41, I think, right? So Warm Mineral Springs, the springs. So we have opportunity, and that's what we're pushing. You can go online, find this study, you can read all about it. It will tell you everything you want to know about workforce, industries that are identified, and what we're doing with growth for the city to bring quality jobs for our citizens. And then we do some other creative things. One of them right now I'm really kind of tickled about is our Commercial Real Estate Summit. We've turned it on its ear. This is our fifth annual real estate summit. And in the past, we've kind of focused on the amenities of Northport as it suits a resident. This time we are pitching commercial sites only. And we are bringing in people who are from all over the USA. We're bringing a speaker from the Atlanta Fed, the Federal Reserve, who's going to talk about growth and what it means for this area. We're going to be bringing in Site Selection Magazine, one of the top guys who loves Northport, sees our potential. He's from Atlanta. He's a Braves fan. He loves to come here, and he sees our potential. And he is also going to be speaking. What this is a marketing tool to tell people about Northport, Florida. It's going to be broadcast. It's a hybrid form. People sitting in this audience and people who will be tuning in into YouTube and watching this from California to New York. And I'm telling you, we're getting people to say, yes, I'm going to be there. I'm going to be participating. We are highly excited about that. We are also doing kind of fun things that we're getting very technologically savvy. We're working with FPL and with the Economic Development Corporation of Sarasota County in doing a drone flyover. We've taken these parcels at Toledo Blade and Price Boulevard, which we know to be shovel ready in terms of development, and we're doing drone coverage with what they call call-outs. And if you can't see me, I'm sorry, it's call-outs a little. To say, here is, Publix, and here is King Plastic, and here is STC, our local training center, right? We're calling out what we do, and we're saying, here's where we are, and here's our quality of life, and look at it from an aerial view. And what you see is 104 square miles of opportunity. That's what you see when you see these things. And it's marketed specifically to developers and builders who care about things like that. So we're pushing our industrial centers. We are so excited about this kind of thing. I can't tell you, my team is so excited. And so those are good examples. I could go on and on and on about how busy we are, but that's the kind of thing that's going to grow this city. Did you have other? Oops. Sorry.
Anybody else has a question? We can, yes, Mr. English.
Parks and Recreation. How many CIP projects do you have active?
Off the top of my head, I don't know. Probably about a dozen.
A dozen. Are any of these CIP projects grant related?
Yes.
I'd be interested in that list. Also, back to the point testing. It doesn't seem like you could put together any type of plan without knowing what the primary pollutant is within the community and the point sources.
Yep, I actually wrote that down, and I'll be meeting with Elizabeth to talk about that.
You'll find them an individual that follows through. Yeah, bless you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we got a couple more online. We are, I think if we can go to 3 o'clock, we'll probably be, that seems reasonable. And again, we're always available. Please.
Okay, this one is also for Parks and Rec, Warm Mineral Springs. The city continually touts the fact that Warm Mineral Springs makes positive revenue for the city, and they are owned by the city but operated by a third party. If this has proven such a success, why not allow a third party to run the aquatic park, and they could operate it in much the same way that shows possible positive revenue for the city instead of massive revenue shortfalls? shortfalls, I made that into a question.
During the operating plans and the conversations with the commission, before the first shovel hit the ground and throughout the process, we worked with a consultant to evaluate different opportunities for how to run the aquatic center. Pencilman Hunsaker was the consultant. They are renowned for operating water, whether it's a pool or a water park. We looked at many opportunities and had those discussions with the commission. As Carrie mentioned earlier in this meeting, that's a possibility. However, we would definitely see, according to the evaluation from the consultant, that the price of admission would likely go much higher than it currently is, that the level of service would be much lower than it currently is, and to meet the expectations from hearing from many years of residents looking for this to be a facility that they could bring their families to. The commission evaluated that and determined that the operation within house was a better fit for the community.
I'll also add that the two operations are very different in that the aquatic center is staff intensive. We talked about needing 19 lifeguards, and that doesn't include the manager, supervisor on duty, or the rec attendants that are taking the admission and handling concessions, whereas War Mineral Springs Park does not have that same requirement for lifeguards.
Okay. And I think the one thing that's important with that that's never really been quantified is, we do have a lot of people coming to visit there from outside of the city of Northport, and potential dollars that they pay when they come here and visit. Obviously you don't get charged admission when you go to the beach either, and it costs a whole lot of money to have that. So that's my 2 cents on that anyways, for what it's worth, which is not even 2 cents maybe. Next question, please.
All right, this one's back to sewer water expansion. Are impact fees being used towards the projected sewer water expansion, and if so, how much? If not, why not? And then this might also tie in finance, I'm not sure. How much does the city receive in impact fees, and what are those funds used for?
I'm going to ask Jennifer DeRozier, Assistant Utilities Director, to come up.
Jennifer DeRozier, Assistant Utilities Director. So our capacity fees for our water and wastewater plants are very specifically tied to the plant capacity only. And very large transmission mains, only I think it's above 16 inches. So it's entirely possible that some of the lines might be able to be paid for out of capacity, but that would be pretty rare because most of our trunk lines are already installed and in the ground. So that's probably not a possibility. And I was running so fast I didn't hear the second part of the question.
I think the second part was more of a general finance of how much does the city receive in impact fees and what are those funds used for?
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You're good.
Somebody else's problem. Did we answer it? Anybody answer it?
Josh, I think, Madison, can you repeat the question? Was it specific to utilities, or do we know that?
The way that it was worded, it feels like it was more of a general, how much does the city receive in impact fees and what are they used for?
Okay. If we don't have that number available quickly, off the top of our head, we're definitely would love to get back with that person if they could leave their contact information, and we'll get that information to them as soon as possible.
Yeah, we have their email, so
Okay,
we can
great. Thank
we
you,
will share
Madison.
that. And then I just have one more. Do you want me to just
Okay.
roll right into it? This is another finance one, and then that's what I have from online. Does the reserve fund have adequate funds for 2021 and beyond?
That's a great question. If we're able to pull up the presentation again, I'm not sure if folks in IT, then I can get to that slide and also explain it. Thank you. I'll tell you when. Keep going. It right there? Right there. Thank you. So on that slide, and as previously mentioned, we are required to hold 20% in our reserve policy, so that 20% of our operating expenses for each fund. So the general fund, as you'll see, we're holding back 10 million, road and drainage, almost 4 million, fire 2.5 million, solid waste 2, and then the building fund. So that is the money that we're able to use for emergencies if anything comes up. And yes, as of for right now, we feel confident that that could help us through 21 and beyond.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you everyone for coming out and everybody who's watched at home and taken part of this process. This staff is available all the time. All of our emails are easy to find. We need this public participation. Thank you so much.
One last comment. First of all, I want to thank you folks for making yourselves available to talk about this. This is a tough subject, and it becomes really noticeable to most people when they get their property tax bills. And it's kind of late after that in a way, because a lot of decisions are made, to be quite frank. And I want to thank you for all the work that you folks do, and everybody in Northport. I think they do a great job. There's always room for improvement. That's an ongoing process. And it's not easy running a city today, or it's not going to get any easier in the future. And as we grow, it becomes even more challenging. So I just hope you folks, keep your nose to the grindstone and work hard, because we appreciate it, to make this a community that we all love to be in. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We all appreciate that comment and sentiment. Thank you.
Yeah, about waivers.